Hey everyone. If you weren't here earlier, my name is Hendricks. I'm one of Jordan's top behaviorist and instructors. And Taylor, if you could pick up my sunglasses, they're somewhere right over there. That would be great. They're right there. So, this is what we call pairs work. Obviously, you just saw Jordan's demonstration on liberty outside the round corral, and in a sense, this is really the same thing, except I'm horseback, versus on foot. And if you watched Jordan or way earlier today, if you watched me just play with Murray at liberty on foot, you saw there's kind of some cool stuff you can do there, but the thing about being on horseback is you can actually move like a horse moves. And so instead of being limited to how fast you can run or how high you can jump or whatever, now all of a sudden you can really play with your horse like another horse would play with your horse. And so the possibilities, are endless because there's just so much more you can do with it. So, this is Solstice, and she actually belongs to a friend of ours, but I've been playing with her for years as I've been learning stuff, and so I figured I would use her for this. But the thing is, a lot of people are like, I have a couple horses, maybe I'd like to be able to do that, but it seems complicated, how do you go about it? And the reality is, if you think about it, this is really actually pretty natural to a horse. When a horse is born and they're a little foal, one of the first things they do is you'll see them within hours running around by the side of their mom. Not necessarily following her, but running around right by her side like this. And they'll go wherever she goes. And if you've ever had an experience where maybe you had your trouble getting your horse across the stream on a trail ride, or your horse was spooky about something, or something like that, right? If you go back and you think about that little baby horse, that thing's going wherever mom goes, and she's not that worried about whether or not she likes the water, or whether or not the leaf blew the wrong way, or there was a mailbox within 100 feet, or whatever it may be, right? She's just, she's got a relationship with her mom, and she's going wherever she goes. And she trusts her, and she respects her, and, obviously it's her mom's job to teach her boundaries and stuff as she grows up and whatnot, but that connection is there, right? Even from a young age. And horses are a precocial species, which means that they're full faculty learners at birth. Basically they can, from the moment they're born, they don't have an adult brain yet, but they can essentially process information more or less like an adult horse. Obviously, they're going to gain life experience and stuff, and they're going to learn things. But basically, you can teach them a lot right out of the gate, even when they're really little. And so, going back to doing pairs with your horse, it really makes a lot of sense to your horse, and this is actually, in my opinion, the easiest way to teach liberty. Now, obviously, that assumes that you have a good saddle horse that you're comfortable riding and you're not worried about, because otherwise that would not be easier. But if you do, to me, it's the easiest way because it makes so much sense to the horse. Now, the first thing that you would have to do, though, is you would have to build a connection with the horse, because without a connection, if you just take two horses and you're like, well, I'll get on one horse and ride around and get myself a fishing pole here, chances are it's not going to look quite like this. And so, before I would even consider doing this, one, obviously you need a horse that you can ride easily, and if you can ride and bridle, it's even better, because that way you don't have to worry about your other hand. But the horse you're going to do the liberty with, At a minimum, they should know the 5 ground exercises. They should be really light on their lead rope. You should be able to pony them well, all that sort of thing before you would go this. And they should also respond really well to rhythmic pressure. So if you saw my demonstration earlier, or if you just saw Jordan's, or like if I put this flag out here, right, she has to respect that and be willing to move away from it or yield away from it. Because if I don't start out having some method of communication, she's not really going to have any idea what I mean when I stop or when I start doing stuff with her. So the first thing you would do is you would essentially start building draw, because there's 2 parts to liberty, right? There's draw, like if I walk away from her like this, right? She feels drawn towards me, right? She wants to be by me, right? And then there's drive, right? If I push into her like this, I want her to stay connected, but at the same time, I want her to move away from me. And obviously that's a lot harder for a horse because as you saw when we did the demo with Zeppelin earlier, it's easy to drive a horse around, but it's harder to drive a horse around and keep them connected. So before you ever start doing things like this, right, where you're trying to push her away but still keep her connected, you really want to make sure that you have a really solid draw going. So essentially, if you were going to start something like that from up here, I would start, like I said, with a lead rope on, like I'm ponying her, and depending on how much time we have, I might bring a horse in that does not know this, that I've never done this with before, so you can kind of see that. But essentially, I need to be able to move away from her and then reach out on the other side and say, hey, why don't you move towards me like that, right? Or if we were doing this on the ground, or really even up here, you could call this blind yielding. And by the way, with any of the stuff that we've talked about today, if you go to our website and you sign up for the online curriculum, we cover pretty much all of this, including how to get started with basic pairs. So the first thing you have to get going is you have to get draw going like that, right? Now, I was kind of putting my flag out there to show you. I'd like her to move away from the flag, but really, even if I don't, right, I would like her to learn to self-draw like this. And then the flag simply becomes a reinforcement if I want her to move closer. But it's important that you use the flag, or if you're on the ground, you use your stick or whatever, right, as a reinforcement and not as the actual cue. Because if you're using the flag or the stick as the actual cue in terms of creating draw, then you're always going to have to use it, and I'd have to constantly ride around with it out like this to keep her there. But if I ride around like this and I say, hey, Solsty, it's your responsibility to keep yourself there, and if you forget about it or if you don't do it, then I can come and I can be like, hey, move that way, right? But I only use it as a reinforcement like that so that I don't have to use it all the time. Now, obviously, there's things like you saw, right, like when I asked her to spin away like that. A little confused, that's okay. No? You can do it. There you go. Right? Now, obviously there, right, the stick was the cue. But in terms of getting all the basic stuff done, because that sort of thing comes way later, right, you really need to be able to have really solid connection and really solid draw without having to constantly use your stick. Because like if I were to say, right, I'm going to go this way, I don't want, again, to have to keep my stick out there, right? She should keep up like that, right? No matter how tightly I turn, right? Or stop, right? Or back up, or whatever. Because without that done, I'm never going to be able to push her away and have her reconnect and work on the driving part of liberty. I'm only ever going to be able to do stuff with draw and have her coming towards me. And so if I ever want to progress past that, it's really important to understand that she needs to be responsible and do the right thing, and you just need to reinforce it if she doesn't. Because then what that happens, right, then you can do stuff like send her behind you, send her away from you, bring her back to you, right? And now she'll reconnect herself. Because she's not always looking for me to babysit her like that. And so you want to get that going well out of each eye. And again, you could practice all of this on the ground too. We call it leading by the shoulder, right? You would just run alongside her. You use one of the shorter 4-foot training sticks. But essentially, you would want to get all of that going before you would really worry about ever pushing the horse. Right? And being able to push them away from you like that, but still have them be connected. So, anyway, so now that I've talked about that, I want to show you kind of what it would look like with a horse that doesn't know as much. Because obviously she knows quite a bit, and it's cool, and I can do that, but I'm going to bring another horse in so I can kind of show you better what it would look like when you're starting a younger horse, or even an older horse that just doesn't know much off like this. So, Taylor, if you have a halter there, you can come put that on Solstice here. And then they're going to bring the Zeppelin back in. And other than the driving we've done here, I've never really done any of this with him. So other than the little bit of driving Jordan and I showed you earlier where we were having to do the figure eight around the arena, that's pretty much it. So I've done a bunch of stuff on the ground with him. I did his colt start. But I haven't really even, I spent maybe one day doing Liberty in the round crawl with him, that's it. Now riding, he's pretty good, he's had a good colt start. I can ride him bridleless, walk, track, canter, the whole thing, all the basics. But in terms of any real Liberty work or pairs, he really hasn't had any. Thank you. And then, is there a training stick out there too? There's one right over there? Oh, perfect. So I'm just going to set this flag here against the wall. Thank you. So when you start out, right, or even if you say, well, I don't care about doing that, but I would just like to be able to pony my horse, okay? Because if you can't get your horse to even just pony nicely by you, doing this is going to be pretty difficult. And I'm just going to tighten this halter up here a little bit because it's on there a bit more loosely than it should be. Try and get his hair out of there. There we go. Good job. And the reason is because at first, like I said, the stick should really be a reinforcement. So with that being true, your horse's movement is really the key. So if I'm stopped like this, okay, and like I said, he's really done quite a bit of groundwork on foot, so this shouldn't come that difficult to him. Like I said, if you're going to do this, make sure you do the groundwork on foot first. So that being said, if I just walk off, you see how he didn't start moving right away? We'd like him to, right? Even if you just want to pony him, he should, if you're going somewhere, he should be going somewhere with you. So what we can do is, just like we would on the ground, I could say, I can do the cue, right? And then the stick's the reinforcement. It says get going. Okay? That was better. Now you can see after just reinforcing that a couple times there, how that time, right, he chose to move off on his own. Nope, a little bit slow, so we'll just remind him. We'll try it again. There we go, that was better again that time. Because if I use the stick as a reinforcement like this, and this part is just easier to do with the shorter stick, that's all. You can do it with the flag. but better. Not perfect, but better. And I can wiggle if I wanted to back up like that, just like I would on the ground. Right, so once it's moving off decently with you, right, then you might want to make sure that you can move away from him and he follows you and he keeps up. So you might say, no, keep up, right? Keep your nose up there. Or if you need to, you could even reach over him, right? Kind of tap him on the other side of the neck like that. Turn around so you can see better. But if I want to move away, sure, I've got my rope as a safety net, but I don't want to have to use the rope, so I might reach over to, hey, bring your neck over, move faster, right? Closer, closer, right? And these are just, there we go. Got them over a little bit, right? And these you just start off super light, maybe just even wiggle it in there, and then you can get a little bit firmer if you need to, right, if he doesn't respond to that. But essentially, you would want to make sure that if you turn away from him, or you move forward away from him, that he would go with you. Because if you think about it, that's really the beginning of draw, right? That's like the most important thing you need to have. Without that, nothing else is going to happen. Now, the other thing you want to do, even though you don't want to take the halter off yet and teach the horse to drive away from you at liberty, what you do want to do is make sure that if you turn towards the horse, he will move away from your horse. And you have the lead rope on here as a safety net, so you don't have to worry about it running off. But if you didn't, again, I could take the stick, right? And I could push and I could say, hey, no, move your front end, move your front end, move your front end, right? And I could reinforce with my stick. So I would ask, right, just by turning my horse, if that wasn't enough, right, and I could reinforce with the stick there. And the reason that's so important is because as you are going around, yes, you want your horse close to you. Yes, they need to keep up, right? Yes, they need to follow you if you turn away from them. But you also don't want to get run over, and you also don't want them to crowd you. And so that's important to make sure that you can get them off of you just as well as you can get them into you. And then the last thing that I personally would do before I would go to my flag is I would say, well, if I back up, can I get you to back up? Now notice how I'm not pulling him back. Because if I were to pull him back, you see how he would turn like that? Right? And we don't want that. But I'm just saying if I back up, and again, Murray here's the cue, then I just say, I'm just going to wiggle the rope like I would on the ground, right? Then I can get him to back up, right? So Murray's the cue, the rope's reinforcement. But once I've kind of got all those pieces going at a basic level, he'll pony around pretty well. And I'm not going to do that on both sides right now just because for, timing and stuff. But if you were doing this, you would want to make sure that you do everything equally on each side, or if you have a worse side, spend more time on the worse side. But you want to get it going equally well on each side. So, now, I'm going to come over here. And I want to grab this flag. And this is a 9-foot one because that's the height that fits in here. So whatever fits in where you're doing is fine. If I was outdoors, honestly, I'd use a 12-footer, but really whatever fits in wherever you are is cool. So now, I want to really make sure that instead of having to tap him, like I was with the training stick, I can get him to start moving away just from the movement of the flag. So like if I want him to speed up, you can see how little effect that's having there. There, finally, right? And I lightly tapped him with it too a couple times just to help him get the idea. Because if I were to go faster, ask it, there we go. Right? And make sure you're rubbing it all. And you can even rub them with your stick as you're going along, like this. Make them feel real good about it. Everything like that. That was better. Right? And remember, like I said earlier in the day, pressure motivates and release teaches. So whether it's the stick or the flag or the rope or if I'm like pressure motivates, release teaches, right? I quit when I get what I want. Because that's what teaches him. He says, oh, so when the flag whirls behind me like that, you would like me to move away from it and go forward. Right? So if I let him get out away from you a little bit there, what if I reach the flag over and says, can I get you to come back closer? And you see how he came back closer to me there? Right? That's important. And like I said, I haven't done, other than the demonstration you saw me do earlier with he and Jordan and Eclipse, where we were just dragging him around outside of the arena, this is the first time he's experienced any of this. Now, like I said, I did his bolt start, so he's had good groundwork, good riding, and everything like that. But, yeah, if I were to try and get away from him and say, don't get closer, there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, ideally, I'd like their eyes to line up, so he's lagging a bit. I'd want to work on that. And I'd like him not to drift out if I kind of turned away from him that tightly. I'd be like, no, keep up. There we go, that was a better response. And he's a confident introvert, motivated by feeling smart, so we need to stop and let him think about it. You can see he'll look at lips there and be like, huh, that was interesting. And again, while I have the rope still attached, I might even want to make sure that if I put the flag out there, if I need to, I can kind of move him away from me if he really starts to crowd me. Now, like I said, I'd be really careful driving him without a rope on because until your connection or until your draw is way better, you wouldn't want to do that. But that doesn't mean that with the rope on, it's not good to make sure that you can get him to move away from you a little bit, just like that. Not really move away like that, not really like doing the circles, but move away just in terms of if you ride towards him, he's not gonna just stand there and try and get run over. So, ultimately, those are kind of the basics of what you need to be able to get done before you can take the rope off and start, trying this without a rope. And then obviously once you get that going really well, then you can start learning a lot more advanced things, start, driving the horse more, start teaching the horse to spin, start circling the horse, you can start cantering with them, all that type of stuff. But at a basic level, that's all there is to it. Now, if I wanted to, what I could do if I wanted to check this out is I could say, I'm just going to put a rope around his neck here so it's not on his nose, right? Just make it a little bit harder so I have less control. And a lot of times, I'll just use one of my softer lariat ropes for that, but I'll just tie this halter kind of around his neck like that. Right? And so I could hold this and I could say, well, before I take it off, am I having to use the rope at all? All right, make sure it's long enough. I'm not accidentally talking to him with that. Right? Can I get him to keep up? Can I get him to stay with me without really having to use the rope? Right? And if the answer is yes like that, then there's a pretty good chance that at that point, you could just plain take the halter off and likely get the same result. Now, I'm just going to take this off to see what happens, but there's a decent chance, like I said, that it'll do the right thing. In reality, if I were trying to teach a horse how to do this, I would spend a lot longer at each stage before I did this. And I'd be a lot more thorough. And I would certainly recommend that you at home should be a lot more thorough. But at the same time, see you start to get a little away from you there. At the same time, given that I understand what all the steps are and how to teach it and what to look for, and I've done it a bunch before, And like I said, I haven't done this with him before, but I've done everything else with him. Really, in, I don't know how long it's been, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Anyway, however long it's been here since I brought him in, right? I was able to get him at a really basic level to come in here and at liberty do pairs. And you can see I was able to create that draw, whereas earlier he was drifting away from me. I'm able to get this, I kind of call inside circle kind of like a safe sort of drive, because you're kind of pushing them, but you're also still turning with them. And you can put your flag out and it's harder for them to run away like that. Now, like I said, I do everything on both sides too, and obviously I just stuck with the one side just for sake of time. But, but other than that, get basic changes in direction with the S concept. That's really how easy it is to teach basic pairs work there. And, then everything else is just, there you go, you see you got confused there, right? I was able to stop him with the flag, say don't get out in front, don't run away from me, don't lose focus. And you can see how that happened when, right, I was pushing into him like this and not when I was pulling away from him, which, like I said, is why you want to be careful with drive instead of drop there. So, anyway, paired work is a lot easier, at least at a basic level, than a lot of people think it is. And of course, if you do a lot more advanced level, then it'll get harder, but it also gets way more cool. So anyway, thanks everybody for coming.